Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. When you look back at the history of the wrestling business, one of the most important concepts that some fans have a hard time connecting with now, with the lack of emphasis on tag team wrestling, is the huge contribution that teams had on the overall product, and how long-term tag teams really provided a great deal of the substance to some of the best events that we ever saw. Despite the matches on the marquee that highlighted all the competitions between the Andres and Hogan, or Flair and Rhodes, often the tag team matches held the promise of the best in-ring action and usually could steal the show on any given night. This was often the case with today's very special guest, whether it was lighting up the tag team division as a member of the High Flyers in Vern Gagne's AWA, the American Wrestling Association, or tearing the house down as a member of the Killer Bees in the World Wrestling Federation. Jumping Jim Brunzell exemplified this concept. Welcome to the show, Mr. Brunzell.
Geez, friend, holy smokes, what an intro. I've never had an intro like that. Thank you very much.
Oh, no.
I had a great career, and, it's always fun, like we talked before the show, it's always fun to talk, reminisce about, when when you were young and in the wrestling business. So, I see what's on TV now, and it's quite a change, and it's really hard for the my style and older wrestler to really adjust to what they see on TV now. So I live my pro wrestling through my grandsons, Cal and Beck, and they're 11 and 9. So they keep me informed.
That's awesome. So thank you so much again for taking time with us. I'm so excited for this opportunity to talk to you. I was a huge fan of the Killer Bees when I was younger, and I can actually remember you guys were in Allentown, Pennsylvania. The whole arena was sold out, and my father and I actually had to watch the matches from the doorway to the building, which actually had a surprisingly good view. And I remember you guys wrestled, you and Brian Blair wrestled the Hart Foundation, and it was just a classic match, and I literally was buying t-shirts through the door and everything. I didn't even get into the building, and I was just such a fan. So thank you so much for doing this with us.
Well, my pleasure. It's sort of hard, to keep your relevancy, because the time span that you find in, fans of wrestling, if they're not right now, if they're not 40 or, maybe 38, unless they really watch a lot of video on, the internet, they really can't remember the WWF at that time and the Killer Bees and the various tag teams. I'm sure a lot of them remember Hulk Hogan, but, it was an exciting time, to be in the business, and if you wanted to be a professional wrestler, and you wanted to make the most money, you had to go to New York.
Oh, that seems to be the pattern. I actually wanted to start with something a lot of the younger listeners don't understand, which is how much the business really has changed since the territorial days. And we were talking earlier. You said that about your grandchildren keeping you up to date. What are your thoughts on the product now? And do you think that the quality of the product is better or worse than when you were active?
Oh, geez, there's no comparison. But any wrestler my age would see what they see in the ring right now, and see, Vince's wrestling is made for TV, and it's made to sell his superstars and to promote, his future business and what pay-per-view is coming up next. And he's been able to do this successfully for 30-some years now. So, it's hard to see that, because everything is timed for the TV. So a lot of the matches are so choreographed. And to me, what bothers me the most when I try to watch this product now is the guys are constantly talking. They're doing interviews, 10-minute interviews in the ring with microphones, and then the other guy does 10 minutes. And, there's very little wrestling, and actually what happens in the ring now is it's just nothing means anything, but that's the way that Vince has, like I said, conditioned the fans for the last 30 years.
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned...
And there's no comparison.
Somebody mentioned that this year at WrestleMania, there was 35 minutes before the first match even started of just conversation and build-up. I didn't understand that. It's valuable time. Ugh.
Oh, I know it. Well, they have a format, and they generally do it according to, the exact time frame. So, they sell this and they promote that, and then they go to commercial and they come back, and then somebody else's viewpoint, and then all of a sudden you get to the wrestling match, and it might not last very long.
It's a shame.
I know that when that's one thing when you talk about tag teams in the early WWF, there was a lot of good tag teams working for New York, and consequently, when we worked with each other, we could fill a very important part of the night with good quality wrestling.
With the use of the internet and streaming services from so many organizations, wrestling's in a lot of ways, just my opinion, overexposed. And I know that during your career, maintaining kayfabe was a really important part of the wrestler's success. Do you think the added exposure and the loss of some of that has hurt the business?
You know what? I think more people are accepting wrestling as strictly 100% entertainment, and there was always a certain mystique about the wrestling in my era in terms of what was presented on TV, and then also what happened at the house show. So I think I think the young guys now respect the business, but they really don't know what it was like to really protect it and live that as part of your life, for 25 years. So
I tried to.
But the best thing about it, Fred, the best thing about it is now these guys are making so much money. It's unbelievable.
Oh, I can't even fathom. Oh, my goodness.
Did you hear the salaries today?
No, I did see there was an article out talking about, I guess Brock Lesnar makes $12 million a year. Somebody said John Cena made $8 million, but even the guy at the bottom of the list was 1.2. I was like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, the top 10. Yeah. When in 1985, I remember I still have the magazine cover. Sports Illustrated has a big headshot of Hulk Hogan, and it says, America's top banana, highest paid athlete, $10 million, 1985. So, he was making $50,000 a week just on royalty.
I know how hard I work every day. I would love to make 1/10 of that.
Oh, gosh.
I try to cater my podcast to the younger fans, and a lot of them actually inquire a lot about entering the business. Is there any advice you'd have for an aspiring young athlete who's thinking about making a move into pro wrestling?
Well, if you got a dream, follow it. If somebody wants something bad enough, I just sort of fell into wrestling. If somebody told me that I would have spent 25 years as a professional wrestler when I was 18 or 17 or 19 years old, I would have told them they were crazy. Because I wanted to play football, pro football, and I had a tryout with the Redskins. Didn't make it, came back. I was going to get my degree. I had 28 credits left to get my bachelor's. And it went back, and then Greg Gagne, who was a teammate of mine at the university, and then he transferred to the University of Wyoming, called me, and he says, hey, my dad's having a camp, and he's going to have Ken Patera and Ric Flair and Bob Bruggers and Khosrow Vaziri and maybe you and me. So I thought, well, geez, it's something athletic, and, I wrestled just a little bit of intramurals in high school, but I thought, well, I'm going to try it, so...
And it definitely worked out.
Oh, yeah, it did. I had a great career, and I'm very thankful. I took quite a beating, and I'm a little sore now. And, I'm going to be 68 this summer, and I've had probably 6 or 7 operations. I've got a new shoulder, new knee, and a new hip. And they might have to redo the knee, and then they might have to do my other knee. So, I believe I had about 5,000 matches, Fred, and over the course of that, you're banging around pretty good, and your body just can't help but you get the joints get full of scar tissue, and you build up that arthritis. So the price we had to pay.
Yeah, hopefully, if they would have paid you guys like they're paying the guys now, that probably wouldn't hurt. But I always try to look for matches that I've never really had the privilege of seeing. And when I searched online, I actually came across one that really blew my mind. I found a match. It was yourself and Greg Gagne as the High Flyers going against the team of Rick Martel and Tito Santana, but you were all still in the AWA, which I thought was so funny because Santana and Martel became Strikeforce later in WWF. And when you and Mr. Gagne were together, was there any like added pressure being teamed up with, Vern's son kind of thing?
Well, I don't think so, because in the AWA, I just did a foreword for a book that's being written by a dear friend of mine, George Shire, who's probably the most gifted historian of pro wrestling, especially in the AWA, going back, 40 years, 45 years. And it's just amazing because the people in the AWA all had their spot, and when Greg and they made a team of us. Actually, we were a pretty good team. Greg could work like a son of a gun, and he was very good on the microphone, and people believed him. And he was a little slighter than me, but that sort of added, we would, garnish that much more sympathy in our matches. But I don't think there was any pressure. I think Greg had pressure on him because he couldn't go to different territories. Like, I wrestled in Kansas City, and then I went to the NWA in Charlotte and was there for 18 months and wrestled a little bit in Atlanta. And Greg never left the AWA, so it would have been a lot harder, because in the business that I knew, when there was 26 different territories you could wrestle in, there was a lot of jealousy between the different promoters, whether it be Eddie Graham or the Blanchards or the Funks, or the guy out in California and the guy up in Oregon. But it's just, that was part of the business. So
I know during your career, you actually got to participate in some of the really, when they started doing really big events that would eventually become pay-per-views like we have now. Like, what was it like, the first time you did, I remember you did AWA Super Sunday, and you also did the NWA AWA Star Wars event. So what was that like for the first time?
Well, I think the one we did, I think it was in New Jersey. It was at the Brendan Byrne Arena, and it was sort of a mixture of different talent that people were trying to fight Vince, and it was sort of a conglomeration of different talent trying to show a little more wrestling style in terms of the talent they had. So, I think it was a ploy. I don't think it lasted very long. I know we had a couple, 2 or 3 matches. I think one was in New Jersey, and I think a couple were in Toronto. So didn't work out that well, but it was always fun.
So when Vince McMahon was looking to expand and he wanted to go national, I know you were one of the people who came over from the AWA and you made your debut with WWF. Was there any big factor that led to that?
Money.
I can relate to that.
Here's the deal. Vince was, once he took Hulk Hogan, and the production that he had on TV, the other 26 territories couldn't compete with that, the high-end, TV show that Vince had weekly. And consequently, all these guys got sucked out, from all these territories, so they were crumbling. So, pretty soon there was none of the big stars that we had in the AWA being, able to work there. So the house started going down. And at that time I had opened a gym. It's called Jumping Jim Brunzell's Gymnasium. And it was a co-ed deal. And it was, regular. We had daycare, and we had sunbeds and $50,000 worth of equipment. And I had the best damn steam bath in the Twin Cities. It was 190 degrees as soon as you walked in the door. So
Ugh.
But so what happened was I went to Vernon. I asked for a guaranteed salary, and because the AWA was falling in terms of attendance and money, and he said, "No, you're not worth it." So here I've been to Grace partner for 10 years, and the High Flyers do a lot of nice houses throughout the AWA. So when he told me that, it hurt, and I hated to leave home because I knew that when I went to New York, I found out that it was every day, so you were gone quite a bit, and that didn't change. Matter of fact, when I got there, I think it was June 26th, 1985. In the first plane, the small plane that I rode on, it was a commuter, and it was from Newark to Poughkeepsie, and Hillbilly Jim Morris and I met that day, and today we're the closest friends, 30-some years later, 32 years later,
Yes.
and we see each other and talk to each other. But that was a start, and boy, I tell you, it was a whirlwind. I think for 3.5 years, Fred, Brian and I averaged 27 days a month.
Oh, my goodness.
On the road. And sometimes, we went 40, 47 or 48. Some guys, I remember Cosro, Baziri, the Iron Sheik, he went 92 days in a row, and finally when he got time off, he drove right past his house because he had been gone so long. His wife got the house redecorated from the outside. He didn't even recognize it.
Oh, my.